okay. All right, I'm going to say good morning and ask for a response. Good morning. Good morning. All right. All right. My name is Orlando Watkins. I serve as Chief Program Officer at the Boston Foundation, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you all to the Boston Foundation this morning, and to join us for this forum, Reimagining High Schools to Better Prepare Students for Career and College Success. The team at the Boston Foundation is delighted to host this morning with our good friends at the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education. They are a key policy advocacy group that has been a really important partner to the Boston Foundation in our work in this area. And my team has had the great privilege of working really closely with their team on a number of topics. So thank you for their partnership and this work and bringing this convening together today. I see many friends and longtime partners in the audience today. Welcome back to the Foundation. For those of you who may be new to the Boston Foundation, we put equity at the center of everything we do. Still, I like to say that. And in this work and the work of the Foundation, we focus on 4 interconnected areas. We think of them as big ecosystems. They are economic opportunity, community leadership, community wealth, and child well-being. In our economic opportunity bucket, where this conversation and convening sits, we believe that a high-quality, accessible, and equitable system of college and career pathways for students ensure they have the opportunity to achieve their true potential and launch successful careers. As we all know, the world is changing at a rapid pace and transforming the context in which students are graduating. Schools must evolve to ensure students graduate as informed, confident, skilled contributors and critical thinkers. We believe that it is incumbent upon our education system, which we're all a part of, to redesign programming to meet the needs of modern students and equip them to succeed in a world that is dramatically different from just a decade ago. Achieving this requires intentional vision, which there's a lot of vision in this room. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. Deep dedication, a willingness to learn, and a great deal of flexibility. Like you, we believe that we can do all that if we work together. We at the Boston Foundation want to play a role in helping this ecosystem work together. You know, we talk a lot about the tools of the Boston Foundation, and one of those tools is our ability to convene cross-sector partnerships, different ecosystems to work together to solve some of our community's most challenging problems. And today, we are incredibly fortunate to be joined by leaders from the state, districts, schools, employers, nonprofits, and higher education. Folks who lead equally important aspects, different aspects, but are working together to achieve impact and success for our students. So to get us started, a little bit of rundown of the powerful speakers and panels that we have. First, we're going to have Ed Lambert, the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education. Ed will frame the conversation first. And after Ed, we will hear from Commissioner Pedro Martinez, Boston Public Schools Superintendent Mary Skipper. Thank you, Commissioner Superintendent, for being with us today. And we'll hear from an incredible panel of education leaders. Before I get off the stage and bring Ed up, I also want to thank my team, Antonia Marinova, for her incredible leadership at the Boston Foundation and in this space. My other colleagues, Alex and Hyung, thank you for all of your efforts to pull this event together. And I never want to get off stage without thanking our events team. We do hundreds, thousands of these kinds of convenings, and we could not have the success without that events team. So Michelle Hinkle, Mimi, Jordan, Ted. I know I'm forgetting a bunch of folks. I apologize. Thank you for your work. And then also just to thank our fearless leader, Lee Pelton, who just continually pushes us to put equity at the center and to keep fighting the good fight in these incredible times. So again, thank you all for being here, and I will invite Ed to join me on the stage.
Orlando, thank you so much for that welcome and for the graciousness of your team here at the Foundation in terms of hosting us. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you for this very important conversation. But I again want to thank Antonia and the team for the partnership that we have with the Foundation, for the planning effort, and of course these magnificent accommodations. And the breakfast was pretty good too. So thank you very much. Since MBAE's founding, our members have been interested in supporting and advocating for high-quality educational experiences that increase the rate of success for students post-graduation, not only in work, but in life. Efforts to reinvent high school go back decades. I don't need to tell you that. The concept is nothing new, even if the definition of it remains a bit elusive. The Boston Foundation, MBAE, and so many of you here in the audience and watching have been writing, talking, planning, debating, designing, and advocating for years for a system that can better serve the needs of tomorrow's students. Well, tomorrow is here. And the good news is that there are a growing number of high schools that are doing it and getting it right. And today you'll hear about some of that work that we hope can serve to inspire us to greater action. However, a lot of the successes that we see today are largely achieved in relative isolation, driven by strong and dedicated leaders, but not necessarily by a structured, intentional, broader movement. And as a result, we've not reached the scale of reinvention that's needed to provide all students with the learning opportunities that they need to be successful. And that's why we're here today. We hope to touch on several key questions related to the creation of a new vision for our high schools, specifically the what, the why, and the how of redesigning the high school experience. We believe the time is ripe in the Commonwealth to define and embrace a vision of high school that moves beyond the programmatic to a philosophy of secondary education that's grounded in innovation, student choice and agency, and greater relevance to the real world, where the diploma is not a finish line but a launching pad for future success. And so why is this the moment? Well, we find ourselves in the process of developing a new statewide graduation standard. We have a Secretary of Education in Pat Tutwiler who speaks eloquently about the need to re-envision the high school experience. We have a new commissioner who has a demonstrated commitment and a set of experiences that make him uniquely qualified to lead in this space. We see the expansion of early college and pathways programs and greater connections for students to college programming and work-based learning experiences. We hope to climb through this open window with all of you to make this the moment when the movement toward a better high school experience for every student finally catches fire. But any attempt to answer the why has to have students at its center. Students are clamoring for change. They feel unprepared for the rapidly changing world that they're graduating into. They struggle often to understand the relevance of what they're learning, and they're leaving high school in many instances without having gained the exposure to and preparation for the career opportunities that could transform their lives. Over 70% of students don't think their high school prepared them very well for life after graduation, and parents are equally concerned. Nationally, we know that far too many students don't experience any concerted effort to align their high school work with career-connected opportunities. Meaningful internships are few and far between, and closer to home, the huge unmet demand for career technical education shows the desire of students and families for career theming and skills that we are struggling to meet. So, convinced of the why we should act, let's turn to the how. In preparation for this event, the Boston Foundation and MBAE talked to high school leaders, district superintendents, national policy experts, and others, all of whom are leaders in this space. And we wanted to learn more about how different stakeholders think about the purpose of high school redesign work, to hear about what's currently working in Massachusetts and elsewhere, and how state and local policymakers can drive progress on rethinking that high school experience. Input from those conversations informs these next few slides. Here's what we learned are the core elements. A strong academic foundation for all students, regardless of the choice and the pathways that we want to develop. We know that future workforce, future citizens need to be well-grounded in academic preparation. Opportunities to earn higher education credit can be transformational for students, whether it be part of an early college or an AP experience, but certainly gives them the confidence, particularly while they have the support of the high school, to be able to move forward. Meaningful, career-connected learning experiences. And while career days are great and fun and everything else, we need to find ways in which we can build those durable skills in our students that are going to ensure their success post-graduation. Attainment of industry-recognized credentials. So many states have gone much farther than we have yet to go in that particular area, incentivizing financially the awarding of industry-recognized credentials in high-demand, high-wage, high-growth fields. And the data is showing that when students earn those credentials, they are graduating at higher rates, they are attending college at higher rates, and they are persisting at higher rates. And so we'd love to see more of that happen. And last but not least, personalized advising and career counseling services. We are growing MyCap in Massachusetts, ensuring that each student has a plan of their own and considering whether or not that should be a required element of our new vision of a graduate. We know this work is not going to be without challenges, however, so we have to have a slide about what the challenges are as we move forward on a larger scale and at a faster pace. As Orlando said, the work of the foundation is always grounded in equity. We need to make sure that the opportunities that we're talking about provided are universally accessible for students across school, within schools, across schools, and across districts. We need to ensure greater schedule flexibility. Take a look at our seat time requirements. Look at what some other states have done post-COVID, where they created some flexibilities then and then enacted them into permanent statute so that we can move away from just having seats in, student seats in chairs, to use a polite word, but giving students credit for out-of-school activities, trying to set up asynchronous learning opportunities for students and the like, trying to work on their schedule and the schedule of their families. Transportation, which I don't have to tell anyone in this room who's tried to put career-connected learning together, and the obstacle that that presents in terms of not only getting kids to and from school, but also getting them to some of these out-of-school activities. The need for an overarching vision and greater state coordination, and this is where the opportunity for a philosophic approach to what high school redesign looks like. And even more importantly, the kind of coordination that helps employers when they're asked to be part of a partnership, not to have to figure out the difference or the distinction between 12 different asks from schools, but having it more uniform and standard in a way that encourages greater participation from business leaders. And last of these challenges, and I'm sure there are more, but the alignment of accountability systems and funding structures, making sure that our Chapter 70 formula and the way we're going to fund this expansion is not divorced from the reality of the resources that are going to be necessary. And the same with accountability systems, to make sure that we are all writ large accountable for trying to produce a very effective system for students. So what are some of the big picture takeaways for the path forward? To try to have this opportunity here today launch an even greater level of dialogue with our state leaders and local educators. To look at some of the best practices that are happening in other states, and I should have included in Massachusetts as well. You'll hear some of that on the panel. And by the way, MBAE is hosting a visit in a couple of weeks to Uxbridge High School. If anyone would like to join us in that, please see me or a member of our team after that. We'd love to have you come out and see the example of a high school where there has really been some great opportunities provided for students. Adopting a holistic approach to tackling these challenges, always putting students first. And of course, focusing on employer engagement and career-connected learning so that we can ensure that teachers have the support that they need from business leaders and from the private sector to give students the skills in communication and collaboration and problem solving, the kinds of things that we think are going to allow them to be successful moving forward. It's time to rapidly accelerate efforts to reinvent the high school experience. With growing numbers of students achieving below grade level, it's no longer an option to ignore the wealth of knowledge that we've gained about the way students learn. We must use that to build a new model that puts all students on pathways to success. We're going to focus here today on one critical aspect of high school redesign, greatly expanded career-connected learning. In order for students to be prepared for good jobs and lifelong success, they need to take part in career awareness, exploration, preparation, and training. Providing these opportunities for students requires intentional, thoughtful partnerships between education leaders and the business community. And providing these opportunities at scale is going to require our state to make some significant policy changes in how we support different aspects of the high school experience. We stand ready with all of you to move this work forward. And so that's why we are thrilled today to have the speakers that we have, the panelists that you will hear in a little bit, but also our speakers who will present not only their own thoughts and experiences, but help jumpstart this conversation in a very significant way. And therefore, it's my pleasure to first bring up someone who, even though he's been with us for a very short 4 months, is no stranger to so many people in the room, and that's because he has spent the better part of his time since arriving here, traveling the state, visiting schools, listening to stakeholders, and really producing for so many of us a sense of hope and optimism that we are going to move forward in the Commonwealth, build on our strengths, but build an even better system for students. This leader has effectuated and brought to bear his impact and skills on the West Coast, in San Antonio, where he turned around the public school system there, and most recently as the superintendent of the Chicago Public Schools. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce someone whose commitment and passion for this work I think is going to be to the great benefit of the students here in Massachusetts, our new Commissioner of Education in Massachusetts, Dr. Pedro Martinez. I'll give this to
Good morning, everyone. Oh my God, I wish you could see the whole crowd from here. So everybody, it's just, I feel so blessed to be here with you. So, and also to be sharing the stage with Mary Skipper. Big fan of Mary, by the way. You know, I want to build on what Ed just shared, because I really believe, everybody, we're at a critical time in our Commonwealth. So first of all, I want to thank the Boston Foundation and the Massachusetts Business Alliance for Education for having me here today. It's great to see so many familiar faces. As Ed said, I've been driving around. I put a lot of miles in the car, but I got to tell you, such a beautiful state. I mean, I never know where I'm at. You know, I just follow Google, but it's such a beautiful state. I just got to tell you, so many bodies of water. You know, like I knew we had an ocean. I didn't realize we had all these little rivers. But anyway, sorry for another day. But again, thank you for coming together, everyone, for such an important topic of reimagining high school. And if you're here, you understand the urgency. You might know a high school student who isn't engaged in what they're learning. Maybe they think they're not capable of college or that they can't afford it. You might know a graduate who feels that they weren't prepared for college courses. You heard Ed just talk about some of the data, or for post-secondary training. You might know a high school student who has no idea about the huge array of jobs that are available in our wonderful state and what they need to get one of these jobs. Or you might have heard of students who are looking for more courses on personal finance and civics. Everybody, we did a survey for what students really prioritize, what they should have had in high school. Personal finance was number one on the list. They didn't expect that. All these are good reasons to reimagine high school. And as I'm now in my 4th month at the agency, I can tell you, as I'm going deep into the data, I also want to elevate even a higher sense of urgency. So what you have in front of you is our recent MCAS results for 10th grade. And by the way, you know, there's a pattern here that goes all the way down to our middle school and elementary school. So the way you read the chart, everybody, is this is our 2025 results. This is for their 10th graders. So the meets and exceeds is the 5th column over compared to last year, but also compared to 2019, which is pre-pandemic. A couple things to note. We were down in English language arts 6 points, Again, it's probably not a surprise with the referendum and how this is no longer a graduation requirement. What's even more troubling for me, though, is how far we are from pre-pandemic levels. And by the way, every single student group. There is no student group that is at pre-pandemic levels. This pattern is exactly the same in grades 3 to 8. There is no student group in our Commonwealth that is at pre-pandemic levels. Many states, certain student groups, including my former state of Illinois, they came back right away. The frustration was the achievement gaps just grew. In our Commonwealth, we have the worst of both worlds. Significant achievement gaps, and we have no group that is at pre-pandemic levels. This is what it looks like for math. Oops. I think, am I doing it the right way? Oh. Let's see. Here we go, math. You can see in math, our decline was a little bit less, but you can see also, again, look at the last column, how far we are for pre-pandemic levels. And so again, very consistent also we saw grades 3 to 8. So again, everybody, this is another, and for me, another sense of urgency. And I just want to, and look, I'm the new person, the new kid on the block. I got to say this. Anybody who didn't grow up in Massachusetts, who's been in education, we knew that the reason Massachusetts went to number 1 was because of the high standards that we have in our Commonwealth. We've always known that. And MCAS has always been the gold standard of assessing whether our children are meeting or exceeding the standards. Created by teachers, we didn't go the path of other states. And so one thing that you're going to hear from me today is just elevating the importance of student achievement. It matters, everybody. So again, you're going to hear that theme again. But again, another reason, again, to also redesign high school. Oops. So what I want to start, everybody, as I start about this conversation, I want to start first with our educational vision at DESE. And it's quite of a busy chart, but the thing that I want you to really focus on is the 3 things that that really stand out. 1, we want our children to be known and valued. Let me emphasize, especially for our students with disabilities and our multilingual students. I passed through the chart pretty fast, but if you looked at the individual student groups, our lowest student groups are our students with disabilities and our multilingual students. And something that I think is really important for us is those students have so many assets. I'll tell you, some of my best work that I've done in my career is taking our students with disabilities and connecting them with employment programs. And the employers love them. They love the students they're very reliable, they're very consistent. Amazing partnerships that I've had in Texas and Nevada and Illinois. So again, making sure knowing that every student is valued and we recognize the assets that come from. That's a big part of our vision. You heard Ed say this. Students want to see the connections. We always, I grew up in an era where people would say, what do you want to be? What do you want to be? In this country, you can be whatever you want to be. And I always felt that was like the wrong question. I think the real question should have been like, what interests you? Like what ignites you? And let me show you how to get there. Let me show you the courses you have to take and the degrees you have to get or the certifications. That should have been the question instead of, what do you want to be, right? So that's how we have to think, everybody. Especially if you're a first-generation student, we don't have that knowledge. Our parents don't have that knowledge. So we have to make those connections for them. And then, of course, what I've been sharing earlier, student achievement matters. So for anybody who thinks it doesn't matter, I want to see where your children go to school. I want to see where you enroll your children. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Because student achievement matters. So when people minimize that, it is very frustrating because who loses out? It is our children of poverty. It is our children of the disabilities. It is our children that are multilingual. Our children further some opportunity. They're the ones that lose out. Because guess what? Parents make up for the rest. That's what they do. I'm the oldest of 12, first in my family to graduate from college, first of all, finish high school. My parents had a secondary education. All of my siblings have finished some post-secondary education. Whenever, and I have a lot of nephews and nieces, a lot of them. Family parties are a whole different deal, everybody. When any of my nephews and nieces need any help, I don't care how financially tight budgets are. My sisters and brothers, they will put tutors. They will do whatever it takes to get to help them. What parent in this room wouldn't do that? What parent in this room hasn't done that? Right? But they have the means, everybody. So what happens when you don't have it? That's the challenge. So that's why student achievement matters. And I know Mary and I are going to be partnering in this, right, Mary? So we have this vision that we created at DESE was before I came. And what I've been doing, everybody, is now working with our team and saying, okay, let's really home in on what the priorities we're going to need to have. And by the way, these are all draft. So please, I want you, what we're sharing with you, we will welcome any feedback. So some of them are not going to be a surprise to you. So the number one, the power of presence. Here's what our data is telling us, everybody. So on average, for a student to be chronically absenteed, the criteria is 18 days, which is about 10% of school days. We have about 180 school days. That's the definition. On average, our chronically absentee students are absent almost 31 days. That's the average. By the way, what's really interesting, when you look at our achievement results, the students who are not chronically absent, they're almost all right there on average, right at the meets. They're just slightly below. That's without looking at even, not even looking at demographics. Like on average, they're right there. So that by itself, everybody, is a huge indicator, because then this is what I've been telling families. It's the basic, it's the foundation. We can have the best strategies in our schools, but if our children are not there, we can't teach them, everybody. And look, older students can deal with technology, but they don't have any joy in it. So we can talk a lot about remote learning and about, there's not a lot of joy for the students in that. And I want you to understand that if our work is not grounded in joy and in the student experience, we're going to miss it. And guess what? It's going to be a reflection of you forgotten what it is to be a high school student. Because I want you to really think about what it was when you were in high school. What were the experiences you remember the most? It could have been a wonderful teacher. It could have been the different clubs or activities you were involved with, the friends you met, the social circles. That's what you remember, right? Not being in front of a computer, trying to, do a whole bunch of problems. I don't think that's going to be your memory. So again, everybody, really important. In strategic objective 2, which is about our learning experiences, no surprise, our literacy launch, it is foundational. One of the challenges that we see right now, we have so few of our districts that are pre-pandemic level in reading. We have actually more in math than in reading. By the way, we do have 97 schools that are at pre-pandemic levels in reading and math. Some of them are in Boston. We want to elevate them, but still have a ways to go. So literacy is still a foundational priority. Future focus, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. And this is about, this is what today's topic is, everybody, about a rapid and robust expansion of college and career pathways. We need to both scale, we need to have the scale and the quality. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that today. The other one is inclusive impact. And this is everybody just making sure we have our best research-based practices for our multilingual students and our students with disabilities. Remember what I said earlier, they gotta feel valued. We gotta recognize the assets they come with. Another priority, and this is a big one for Massachusetts, for our Commonwealth, is we have to, we talk about Teach Tomorrow, we have to expand our teacher pipelines. It's just, we see a huge opportunity right now to really do that. We're a wonderful state to work in. And I said, look, I got no shame. We're like 2 hours away from almost any state. You got Connecticut, you got New Hampshire. I'm sorry, our states are prettier. I've been driving around. There's no reason why we can't be stealing, teachers from all over the, I'm sorry. I mean, that's how we did it in Chicago, but that's how we rolled in Chicago. We were like, Chicago is the Paris of the Midwest. I mean, come on. Detroit, sorry, everybody. Detroit, Indianapolis, really? Milwaukee, really? No. That's how I see Massachusetts. So again, we have to be aggressive of expanding teacher pipelines. The other one, the last one, everybody, is around accelerating achievement. And this goes back to what I said. We have to elevate, and as I'm going out to different districts, I'm talking to school committee members, superintendents, to parents, to students, and I'm saying very clearly, I am, asking for your support and help to elevate student achievement. It matters. We have to talk about it. We have to understand what's going on. I will partner with our superintendents to make sure that we raise expectations. We'll figure out the support systems, because this is what it is, everybody. It's about meeting children where they're at, and then our agency is meeting districts where they're at and really supporting that. So just recently, everyone, and Ed said this, we had, it's so cool to be, in Massachusetts today. especially for an inner city kid like me, because we're about to now, you saw the results for MCAS for 10th grade, but the amazing opportunity we have in front of us to set a new path forward for our graduates. So we just released our vision for a grad. You can see right in front of you, we want our students to be thinkers, contributors, and leaders. We want them to be academically prepared because, again, everybody, if they're not academically prepared, the rest is for naught. You're not going to have leaders if they're not prepared, because we want them to be creative problem solvers. We want them to be self-aware navigators. We want them to be intentional collaborators and responsible decision makers and effective communicators. For all the employers in the room, tell me a quality that you wouldn't want, for your students. And by the way, academic prepared talks about competencies, about the skills that they bring to your workplace, right? The things that you worry about the most. And these other qualities, that's the leadership qualities that you look for in every one of your employees. So this is just the outline, everybody, but this is the last slide. And I'll just share with you, we actually announced this at Attleboro. I don't know if anybody's been there to that high school. Very diverse, beautiful high school, beautiful building. And what I loved is there, as we walked the building, we saw career tech pathways. For example, in medical assistance, culinary arts, early childhood education. They have early college programs. And so, and as we talked to the students, they could see the relevance. They could see the connections. They were talking about what goals they had. And so for us, that this was something that was really, again, very impactful for us as we released this. So let me get into the two initiatives that I want to go a little deeper. So one, let's talk about early college. And my staff knows I can talk about this all day, every day. I believe early college is going to be the future of education. Let me tell you why I'm so big on early college. So first of all, in Texas and in Chicago, Texas is probably the number one state in the country for early college, only because they've been doing it for so long. So this, for Texas, they doubled down on this at least 20 years ago. My former district, San Antonio and Dallas, were the two leaders in the state. I had a high school, everybody, who had the highest number of students, percent of students graduating with associate degrees in the state. Travis Early College, over 90% of the students graduating with associate degrees. And think about that for a second. They weren't graduating from high school. They were graduating with associate degrees. And what was really cool is for that, that under 10% that didn't have enough credits, the college president was so passionate about the school, he would bring the students in the summer just to finish up. He's like, if you're not done, just come in for the summer. And so everybody, when in Chicago, we increased fourfold, 400%, the number of students in early college, to the point where by senior year, last year, we had 6,600 seniors finishing early college programs, 400% increase, 300% increase in students getting associate degrees, records in students getting a year's worth of college, and records getting at least a semester. So the story I like to tell is we had a room at least 5 times the size of this space. And so we would celebrate these students. It got to the point last year, everybody, where I didn't have enough room for the students. Like I got a call and say, "Superintendent, we don't have enough space." And I said this publicly. I said, "Give us 5 years. We're gonna fill up the convention center. That's how big it's gonna be." By the way, no race gaps, no income gaps. So why is early college so powerful? We're leveraging our K-12 resources with our college resources. So for my superintendents who struggle to find that, and by the way, we do phenomenal in advanced placement, phenomenal in this Commonwealth, phenomenal. But guess what? Some of our districts, they struggle finding that AP calculus teacher, right? That AP physics teacher, that AP government teacher. Guess what? We have over 100 higher ed institutions in our Commonwealth. And guess what they have? They have science professors, adjuncts. They have math adjuncts. They have, government adjuncts. They also have engineering. They also have business. They also have healthcare. They also have education. So imagine now the possibilities in our high school schedules to open that up and leverage both sets of resources. And then here's what I love when we do it right. Because these classes, everybody, they're high stakes. Because and we tell this to the students. We scare them. We do it on purpose. Tough love. We say, you failed this class. This will follow you forever. Because your high school diploma doesn't follow you. Your college diploma, am I wrong here? Your college transcripts, they follow you everywhere. So now the student's like, oh, and so now you got the teachers, you got the counselors, you got the professors, everybody's monitoring the grades, and they're checking like, Pedro, why'd you miss that assignment? What happened there? And everybody, look, I have a 15-year-old, or soon to be 15-year-old. I feel your pain. I have a sixth grader as well. I feel your pain. They don't listen to us, but guess what? They listen to our staff. They listen to our teachers, right? They listen. And so that's why early college works. And then you build their confidence, and next thing you know, they're thinking, I can do this. And all of a sudden, that first generation kid that wasn't thinking about it, like, I can go get the associate's degree. I can go get the bachelor's. That is what happens, everybody. So today in Massachusetts, we have 10,000 children that are getting right now early college programs. Chelsea's here from the Alliance here, that we're partners on this, right, Chelsea? Along with Commissioner Ortega, which, by the way, he and I both have this passion for this. Commissioner Ortega is our Commissioner for Higher Education. And so, what we're talking about is we want to increase that exponentially. Exponentially. I even throw out the number 100,000. My staff don't like me to throw it out. But look, at the end of the day, we got 140,000 between juniors and seniors, and early college starts in 10th grade, by the way. So, we can get to 100,000 kids. So right now we're at 10,000. So that's one. The other one, everybody, and I'm so, so grateful to come into our Commonwealth when the Healy Driscoll administration has prioritized career tech education in such a special way. $100 million is being invested just this year alone. I've gotten to visit some of our career tech schools. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. I mean, just wonderful. I was at Lynn, where they have wonderful programs within their comprehensive high school. At Tech, my God, I mean, just phenomenal. And so, again, everybody, the only thing I would ask my career tech colleagues here in the room is, look, I want us to make sure that not only we're having high, the strong certifications, industry recognized certifications, but I also want them to be stackable credits. Let me tell you why. How many of us as adults had to go back to school, right? To get our graduate degrees, to further our education, right? Most of us in this room. How scary would it be if you had to start from nothing? How scary would that be? Think about that for a second. So I want all of our students, so if you want to go into construction, you want to go into, the electrical trades or the plumbing trades, God bless you, do it, right? We need them. But let's have stackable credits, because later on they might say, I want to open up my own business. I want to go get a business degree. Or maybe I want to go get, a certification to be a project manager or to be an engineer. Our children continue to grow, right? They continue to evolve. So everybody, just to conclude, I think we're at an amazing place right now in our Commonwealth. This is the time. And what I would ask of all of you, just to double down, where you can be impactful, not only understanding the direction we're going and supporting us along the way, but providing those experiences to our students. Because when they get a chance to have internships with you, to have job shadowing experience with you that are very meaningful, that ignite their passion, so that instead of us asking that question, what do you want to be when you grow up? We ask them, what ignites you? What excites you? What makes you get up out of bed right away? Let me show you. Let me show you this field, in whether it's technology or healthcare or education. Let me show you. And by the way, the wide array that exists, right? Let me show you, and let me even ignite that passion even more. And let's partner with your district. Let's partner with your state to show the path so they can see exactly where we're going. Thank you, everybody.
Commissioner, thank you for those thoughtful comments. By the way, I think this program is being recorded, so you're not going to be able to reel that 100,000 number in that easily. There you go. Our next speaker is also well known to everyone in this room, but rather than reference her bio, I prefer to mention the qualities that I think lead her to be very successful in one of the most demanding jobs there is in education. Her optimism, her passion, her energy, and her commitment to students has always been evident whenever I've been in the same room with her, and we've all had the opportunity to hear her speak. So it's a pleasure for me to bring forward to you to share those qualities this morning with all of us. Please welcome Superintendent of the Boston Public Schools, Dr. Mary Skipper.
Sorry, I have to move with the mic. So good morning, everyone. And so first of all, I just want to say how blessed I feel and we should feel to have Commissioner Martinez here. And I say that having known him for multiple years through the Council of Great City Schools, because he has a moral compass that puts kids in the center. And you can have a lot of other qualities, but that's the one that matters. And so I'm looking forward to really doing a lot of good work with him here in Boston. But I know that everything he's talking about is in his heart to do what's right for kids. I also want to thank the Boston Foundation, because it's these kinds of consortium get-togethers that allow us to move the work. Orlando and Lee, they're just so good at bringing the right group of people together. And that's who I see today in the room, right? It was sort of like a wedding. You see people that you haven't seen in 3 decades and 2 decades, and then you realize how old you are. But I wear a pin pretty much everywhere I go, which says it takes a village. And I never keep my eye off this, because the truth that I've learned in my career is it takes a village to do the work we're talking about. And the village is in this room. And so when I come to these things, and as you come to these things, I would ask 2 things. 1, for you to think about, what are some things I've learned when I leave here today? What's a couple things that I've increased my knowledge? But more importantly, what am I going to do to be part of the village? How am I going to leave today different tomorrow to do the work? That would be my ask. It's not lost in me that this is October, and in October in Boston in the BPS, we celebrate College and Career Month. And so this is like a big thing we're doing with all of our schools, and Saturday we have our big College and Career Fair. And it comes at a time when, we've talked a lot about career tech for years and career-connected orientation for years. And there's so much about it that feels familiar. And yet, what is vastly different is that the kids, for the first time, are using their agency in their feet to demand change. And that happened post-pandemic. It is not coincidence that 1 out of 2 high school students in the US are chronically absent, because they are not clear on what their why is. They are not clear on what is in their control to do different. And for all of us, if we don't feel purpose, we don't engage. So what you've heard today about academic slide, what you've heard today about the chronic absenteeism, it's all folded up in an urgency that's very different. And many of the faces I look around this room have sat in these same kinds of consortiums. But what is different are the children. And so for that urgency, my experience is that when we really get our act together and we really choose to do something different in education, it's because there's a sense of urgency. There's a need. So that is sort of what we come today with, I think all of us. I think in BPS, this is for me, coming from the high school world as a principal and then in charge of the high schools, I see that runway so short for high schoolers. We did a reconfiguration in Boston back to 7 to 12. And so now for the first time actually ever, 7th grade is the transition grade for our students, for the most of them. We still have 9 to 12 schools, but 7 to 12 is that time when kids are now thinking about, what is my final destination? And so for us, we're no longer interested in having scatter plot. Great programming there, CTE over here, couple of great career programs over here, early college over here. We want to construct an ecosystem of choice, of access, and of opportunity for every BPS high schooler. That is our goal as we kind of take in this new set of information of what our kids are asking for to do. Brett Dickens has joined us. Is Brett here? Back here. Brett Dickens has joined us, and she is now leading our secondary office, building on the great work of Ted Lombardi that many of you knew. Brett comes to us having worked in Boston, having been a school leader, having been a CTE leader in Providence, comes with a wealth of experience. And that is helping to build on the foundation Ted and the team put in place, and that we're now moving forward to create this ecosystem. So what does that look like? Well, the first is MyCap. So for choice and access and opportunity to really work together, students need to have a plan. And so we have been a leader with MyCap for years now, but we see it really taking root. And so what MyCap has is it's really a multi-year post-secondary plan for students, where they are able to think about their interests, about their talents, about their skills, about their resources. And we do it through a series of conversations, surveys, interviews, experiences. What kind of learner are they? Are apprenticeships better? Are internships better? Are job shadows better for them? Is immersion good for them? You know, do they want stackable credit? Do they want a combination of early college? That all needs a plan. And so we undergo MyCap beginning now actually in the 8th grade. The 8th grade is really the jump-off point for us. And that 8th grade starts with family engagement. So all families are engaged in MyCap. They know what it is. They know what their children are going to be doing. From there, we then make sure we have industry experts in the schools because we want them to talk with the kids about their experiences and what different industries entail and what it looks like. And then we build from that, where in that 8th grade year, we make sure all adult-facing students, guidance counselors, all kinds of counselors, teachers are able to talk with students about what schools offer, what pathways and programs there are, not buildings, not sports teams, but how they can, in their choice of high school or in the high school they're in, how they can get to what they want for their future. So MyCap has been extremely instrumental for us, and we know that all students need that kind of plan. Additionally, we just put forward to school committee a policy, which is an educational recruitment, admission, and retention policy. It sounds small, but it's not. Because what it does is it basically says, for the high school experience, you need to have interviews. You need to have videos and experiences they're going to teach kids about what high schools are offering before they set foot in them. It really requires our high schools to take on a much deeper value of this work in career connection and early college for students. So MyCap is one whole piece. But then we also are organizing around industry clustering. And this is critical, particularly Mabe and business owners. We've been trying to really listen to the business community in Boston about what are those areas of industry that we are growing the workforce for. What does that look like? And so 2 great examples of that. One would be EMK, the Edward M. Kennedy School of Health Careers, which with an amazing $38 million partnership and grant from the Bloomberg Foundation, has allowed us to develop an industry cluster there, which previously had been nursing and a few other medical areas, and extend it with Mass General Brigham. And I think this is a foundational model for where the Commonwealth can go. But this is really a deep investment by Mass General Brigham using Bloomberg Foundation dollars to be able to really engage students so that they get work-based learning, they have the ability to do internships, they have the ability to do stackable credits, and they can either graduate EMK and go straight into work, into a job tomorrow at Mass General Brigham, or they can go on to early college. But either way, they have a trajectory. The other would be Madison. Madison Park, we just signed historic project labor agreements. And this is 50 positions across 5 different trade areas that will place students the minute they come out of Madison into that union. That would be carpentry, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, right? Building maintenance. These are critical areas. If you've ever tried to get a plumber or an electrician, you can't find one. But these are the jobs that our kids have traditionally not gotten into. So these are historic agreements with the building pathway that lands them into positions. That's how we have to be thinking about helping build those trajectory for students. The other is early college. And again, we don't see this separation of career connection and early college. They need to go together. But early college in and of itself, without mapping back to what students are interested in, to give them the concrete academic skill and training that they need to be successful, is just early college. So we are in the process of mapping that early college. And to give you a sense, 2021, we had 107. We had about 170 students engaged in early college, which is a lot. Today, we have 1,000 students engaged. So when we put our minds together, when we work state and district, when we work within the district and with our colleges, we can do it. These are the areas that I think are examples. They're good models, they're best practice, they're things we can seize upon. It does not mean that we don't have challenge, right? We have challenge. We have some pretty big federal challenges, right? I'll leave it at that. We also have, issues around schedule. If you've ever tried to reconstruct a high school schedule, the bells all go off, right? That is just reality. It's either unions, because time matters to unions, and so CBAs have to be looked at, like we've just done in Boston, or it can be regulations, like within the state, that become barriers that we have to look at and think about, what does seat time really mean, right? Is it of value? Can we be more flexible? Another area that we need to sort of look at as a challenge. So there are going to be challenges, but we have so many opportunities to combat those challenges. Campus without walls. I think Ayeli's here somewhere, right? Back there, Ayeli Shakur, right? Campus without walls, pilot with DESE. That is the ability, as the commissioner talked about, to take advantage of, for districts particularly that don't have the ability to send students to particular early college courses, to be able to take advantage of the 200 institutions we have statewide. It's a true campus without walls. That's one. New Skills Boston. Marinelle's here. New Skills Boston's a great example of something that we've been doing with EdVestors to be able to build up those competencies for students and pathways. Boston Opportunity Agenda, another one that to us presents huge opportunity to get a collection of folks pointed in the direction. The PIC, we will be in a historic moment, handing off of Neil Sullivan, who's in the back row that many of you have known for years, who deserves a huge round of applause. All of the great work of the PIC, which we have the PIC in Boston, the Private Industry Council, and handing those reins to Michael O'Neill, who's our vice chair. Michael? Who knows BPS, who knows Boston, and most important, has the same moral compass around kids, right? Huge opportunity. We have to look for them. Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce and Jim Rooney. We've been doing great work. We've built financial literacy, having identified with industry in Boston. That was the number one thing they felt kids needed. Guess what? It was the number one thing kids said they needed. We came together and built a course that we are now piloting this spring for credit within BPS. We will do the same thing with healthcare. So these are just all opportunities that we can collectively do together. But it's going to take that work. And when I say it takes a village, it starts with me and Pedro and every person in here. So when I look out, I see many of you that I've had relationships historically with, but what I see more is the opportunity you present to our kids, all kids, because this is a social justice issue, that our kids can get the ability, be it a multilingual learner, a special education student, a student who's coming from poverty, students who are Black and brown students who are constantly underrepresented in particular fields. Like, this is the opportunity to break those ceilings and to do it at the time that if we don't, kids are not going to keep coming. So I see this as moral imperative. I see this as the reason we are assembled today. And I'm looking forward to doing the work with you and to seeing what you have for ideas in that work. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Antonia Marinova. I'm Associate Vice President for Programs here at the Boston Foundation. And wow, thank you all. Thank you. It's going to be very hard for us to follow that, except that we have a panel of stars together, so I wouldn't be surprised if we surpass it. Thank you, anyway. Without further ado, let me invite our panelists to the stage, and I will introduce them as I take my own seat. Let me just say this. We have assembled this panel for a number of reasons. We wanted to hear from educators, like principals and superintendents, who are close to the work and can talk about what's happening on the ground, so to speak. We wanted to talk to a couple of experts who can help us situate this in a comparative context with what other states and districts are doing. And because the career-connected learning piece is so critical to this, we'd be remiss if we didn't include the employer perspective. And no pressure, HK, speaking for all employers in the state. I'm just kidding. So we have with us today, I'm going to go in this order, Mike Rubin, who is the principal of Uxbridge High School. We have Jennifer Shorter, interim chief academic officer at Lynn Public Schools, stepping in for the superintendent, who couldn't join us, unfortunately, today. We have Julie Lammers, president and CEO of American Student Assistance, Kyle Hartung, senior advisor at All for Ed, and H.K. Howard from Mass General Brigham. So thank you all for today for joining us again. Now, in the interest of time, if you'll allow me, I'm going to skip my first question because we're a little bit short on time and get straight to the meat of it. And Jennifer and Mike, I'll start with you over on the other side of the panel. I'm hoping you can tell us respectively in your district and your school a little bit more about the ways you've been expanding innovative options, pathways for students to engage in both sort of rigorous higher ed bound learning and career connected learning. What have you done, and maybe what have you been unable to do?
No pressure going further. Ooh.
And keep this short.
So hi everyone, thanks for having us to speak about the programs in the schools. So to give a little bit of background, we are one of the Innovation Career Pathway, I guess, forefathers. We were one of the first 4 programs in the state to earn the designation back in 2018. And this year it's grown. We have students in our high school. We've changed our model over the years. We actually have the 8th graders in our school. So our MyCap process starts in grade 8. And of our 612 students, roughly 450 of them are engaged in some sort of career-connected learning. All 600 participate in the MyCap process. Of the 450 that are involved in some sort of career pathway, it's either the 8th grade exploratory that allows them access to either of any of our 5 innovation career pathways, hopefully soon to be 6, as well as a partnership with our local Chapter 74 career technical education schools. So students are making well-informed decisions. So that's been one of the main positives. I think one of the challenges that that we run into is that we're trying to do it in an ecosystem where Chapter 70 and Chapter 74, despite the imperative of career-connected learning, are funded differently. So that does create some challenges. I think the other main challenge that we've been able to really mitigate through the work that our internship coordinator does, because he's out there somewhere in the audience, when we're placing 80 of 100 kids out in job placements, keeping track of all of them and making sure that they have strong partnerships in the community, it's a challenge, but it's one that we actually welcome, and it's enabled us to have some really great conversations within the building as well, making sure things are calibrated with our educators.
Wonderful. Jennifer?
Awesome. Thank you again for allowing me to be here. And I am greatly appreciative to be able to speak on behalf of Dr. Yvonne Alvarez, the superintendent of Lynn Public Schools. Career connectedness learning is absolutely necessary to ensure that every student sees purpose and possibility in their education. Dr. Alvarez's vision, and personally something that we share, has always been to design systems where students, particularly those furthest from opportunity, like Commissioner Martinez noted, his parents had a 2nd grade education. I come from a home where my dad had a 6th grade education, and people are shocked when I tell them that my parents picked cotton. I'm from the South, if you don't hear it in my accent. And so we want to make sure that our kids can access learning that is relevant, rigorous, and aligned to their aspirations. In Lynn, Dr. Alvarez's vision has really been to create this work, and we have a new school this year, the City Arts and Science Academy, which we refer to as CASA. It's a new 6 through 12 innovation school designed to integrate sciences, careers, arts, and pathways through project-based learning. While Lynn definitely had the strong early college work and vocational options, we lacked a model that intentionally connected STEM thinking, design, and the performing arts to authentic learning experiences that were interdisciplinary for our students. And so CASA was developed with that idea in mind to fill that gap, not through what we may have grown up with, traditional direct instruction in STEM or arts, but by really creating an ecosystem where everything worked together, where students learn by designing, performing, and solving real-world problems, which we saw as part of the vision for DESE. And so our work is very much aligned with that. But it also was intentional in making sure that we were including the voices of all stakeholders. No voices were left out. When we think about college and university partners, STEM employers, expert partners in the arts, parents, teachers, district staff, and the most important voice in the room would be the students. And so making sure we were intentional in engaging them in the design of the school as well. This was more of a one-year planning process. What if you've ever started a school before, you know that that is an intensive process.
It works.
Okay, awesome. But the intentionality of making sure there was coherence and alignment between the budget, human resources, and curriculum design, all grounded back to the district strategic plan and DESE's innovation pathway priorities, was some of the challenge that we talk about but don't talk about necessarily. And the students do engage at CASA in Project Lead the Way courses such as design and modeling. And they're going to also take the Cambridge International courses that offer opportunities for them to earn college credits while still in high school. And these pathways really do allow our students to explore early careers, such as environmental life sciences, manufacturing, information technology, within a context that honors that creativity, right? Well, we don't necessarily, one of the phrases that I use is, don't think outside the box, think as if the box doesn't exist. And so creating that space for our students to think as if the box does not exist. And so it's not just for college or for a specific trade, but for life and work in a complex world. And so CASA really embodies that work by blending the technical with the creative and critical thinking to ensure that every student graduates prepared to innovate, contribute, and lead.
Thank you. Wonderful. And since you mentioned stakeholders, I'm going to use that as a segue to go to an important stakeholder, which is our employer voice. HK, Mass General has been very active in providing workplace opportunities for young people, most recently with the Edward M. Kennedy Academy partnership that Superintendent Skipper also referenced. Can you share a little bit more about what motivates Mass General Brigham to do this work? And here's where I ask you to speak on behalf of other employers. What might stand in the way of others joining you and sort of trying to do this at scale?
Sure, yeah, thanks for the question, and thanks Superintendent Skipper for shouting out our partnership. So as you mentioned, Mass General Brigham has been working deeply with running youth programs with Boston Public Schools and other public school systems for over a decade now. But we really chose to go much deeper with Edward M. Kennedy Academy for Health Careers and supporting them to build out a wall-to-wall CTE academy that will, in hopefully a year from now, have 3 CTE pathways that align to 5 advanced career pathways at Mass General Brigham. And we really decided to pursue that for 2 reasons. One is, of course, because we are a mission-driven nonprofit institution that deeply believes in advancing equity and education. But the second is because this is a workforce development talent strategy for us that we know is going to have a real financial return on investment for us. We believe that by investing in training these local Boston Public High School students and supporting them to advance along career pathways with us, we will be able to fill hard-to-fill roles much more quickly, and we will drive longer retention outcomes as those students will be stickier to us, and we will continue to support them through tuition reimbursement, through advanced career training opportunities, so that they can continue to progress economically and in their career goals with us. And a couple of reasons why I think this is challenging and might be kind of deterring other employers from pursuing this is one, a lack of trust that high school students can, in fact, pursue these opportunities immediately post-graduation and will be prepared. We have that decade of experience to fall back on to know that students can and will, in fact, exceed our expectations if we really support them to succeed in these roles. And then the second is it does require an upfront investment, right? We're putting a lot of resources into this initially, trusting that we will get that return on investment on the back end. And we're really fortunate to have the support of Bloomberg Philanthropies and of our many partners, including the Boston Public School System, in this initial investment in this work.
Awesome, thank you. Julie and Kyle, I want to go to you next, hoping that you can help us zoom out. As Ed said, as much as we don't like to admit it, Massachusetts is hardly leading this work. In fact, there are districts, cities, states ahead of us in other places. Share with us a little bit more about what you think are policy or practice initiatives in other places that we could look at to meaningfully expand career-connected learning for our high school students. What are some common threads? What are some lessons learned? Sort of all through the lens of how Massachusetts could do this better and what it could do and what it could consider not doing.
Yeah, I'm happy to start.
Either way.
Yes, so I'm Julie Lammers. I'm the president and CEO of American Student Assistance. We're an education nonprofit focused on education and career readiness issues, and really trying to expand the runway to help give young people more opportunity to think about who they are, what they want from a career, and chart a course to post-secondary education success. And so, one of the things that we look at when we think about state policies, I think there are sort of three things that I would focus on at the outset. One, we see a lot of states that have a very clear vision from top leadership, from the governor's office on down, of this is how we are building a system of pathways. We see that happening really well in Indiana. They've created very clear structures, changing graduation requirements, changing their commitments to work-based learning and to industry-recognized credentials before graduation. We see that in Delaware, that for a long time, 10 years now, has been building out a very robust pathway system. And one of the other things that they have done really well in Delaware that I think has been pointed out by both the city of Boston, as well as Uxbridge and Lynn, is they are really making a concerted effort to extend that runway. That this work doesn't just start freshman year in high school. We need to give young people an opportunity no later than middle school to start thinking about who they are, what they want, and so that they can make deliberate choices about pathways a little bit better than we currently offer. We see a lot of young people that are foreclosing opportunities for themselves because they have not experienced it or understood it by the end of 8th grade. And so those pathway options are often already off the table if they haven't had that chance to really think about who they are and what they want. And so we have an obligation, I think, in earlier years to start having those conversations about career. So I'd say clear state vision, extending the runway into middle school in a much more deliberate way. And I think one of the other things that points to employer engagement is a lot of states have done good work in creating very strong intermediaries to help facilitate the work between what school systems are doing and what employers need. It gives, as Ed said, there's a lot of reasons for employers to be able to say no to this work. Transportation is hard, logistics are difficult, liability issues, paying. We know the great work the Boston PIC does to make that system really easy in the city of Boston. That is not universally the case. And so thinking about how we build up really strong intermediaries. In some states, it is a state entity. It could be a community college system, as it is in Delaware. In Rhode Island, it's a workforce development board. But really giving really robust systems to make sure that we can facilitate the process in a much easier way. I think would be three places to start if we're thinking about what states can do.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Kyle Harding. And just transparency, I'm also a resident of Boston and a parent in the state, so I'm trying to figure out which hat to wear when I listen to
all of them.
Julie hit on a lot of some of the key places that I would mention, and I might add some motifs to what we've already heard from Julie and add a couple others to the mix. And I would argue, though, too, that Massachusetts, although self-critical in the room today, but has accelerated its progress faster than most states that I've seen who've decided to adopt an early college, high school, or a pathway strategy. And so I just want to sort of give credit where credit is due and not suggest that Massachusetts is lingering out in the darkness. There's a lot of effort and coordination and collaboration that's happened that has gotten Massachusetts to where it's at. To the Delaware point, and actually to the entire point, can I, by show of hands, how many people in the room represent or work in higher education? Okay, take a look around. This is one of the big keys that I would put on the table is when I look out at states or regions across the country that are doing this work really well, is that number would be drastically larger when we look at representation in a room. Not to throw shade on anyone in the room representing high school or K-12 reform, working in the policy arena, or representing the employer perspective. But these systems are only fully operational when we have post-secondary partners at the table actively, not just waiting to find out how they can contribute, but at the design stage in terms of how do we really build a system so that we're not just connecting programs over time. The point that Julie raised around Delaware, I would accentuate, yes, small state, and the result of their work with most of their high school population in a pathway program at this point is the result of intentional collaboration. I'm talking bi-weekly people, higher ed, workforce development, people from the colleges, the districts, the state, working together consistently week over week, year over year to figure out how are they going to not just coordinate and activate their programs, but how are they going to align resources and funding over the long term toward a set of common goals and aims. So it was about people decentering themselves and their unique position in the system and what they want or need, and saying what is most important here, a thriving economy, or young people growing into adulthood, knowing that they have opportunity in front of them and having agency and choice. So yes to Delaware. You mentioned Texas as well. I think one of the things that Texas has done extraordinarily well is coordinate across higher ed, post-secondary, and from Texas, but also invested deeply in building regional intermediary capacity. So this function of regional intermediaries to be the conveners, the cajolers, frankly, the advocates for the policies and practices that we need to sort of hold the mental model of what a system at a regional level that connects K-12, post-secondary, and workforce together has been critical in their ability to scale the work. And that's not just hoping that an intermediary shows up, but investing real dollars and resources into scaling those functions across the state, which is in effect bringing partners to the table on a consistent and regular basis. Illinois, I want to mention, with their Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act. So this is not a mandate, but it's a great storytelling piece of legislation that Illinois has had in place for a long while that has triggered year-over-year activation of acceleration and partnerships across the board. I also wanted to name Colorado. If you look at what Colorado's been up to in the last couple of years, through policy legislation called 1215, the Big Blur Task Force, they have been doing concerted work to really de-silo K-12 and post-secondary and workforce, which I think is a critical move that Massachusetts has within its power to really move forward on as we think about the representation in the room, for example, and how do we not talk about the portrait of a graduate, for instance, about a K-12 graduate, but what is the portrait of a citizen of Massachusetts, for instance, which requires a very different level of stakeholder input and conversation with and among young people and family and community, but also the broader stakeholders across the Commonwealth. And then the one other thing I would mention is folks who are increasingly focused on and not over-indexing on private sector employment as we think about work-based learning opportunities, but thinking very broadly about public contribution that young people are eager to make, but also the massive infrastructure in any given state or city around public sector jobs that are often left out of the conversation when we talk about work-based learning opportunities in both the secondary and the post-secondary level.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I think from the way we've talked about it, it's clear to me that career-connected learning is no longer nice to have. I think we all think of it as a critical piece, but it is also the case that many of our high school programs still sort of give students the options of either taking on a pathway where they get hands-on work experience or a pathway, a separate program where they can earn college credit early on while they're still in high school. And my question is, how do we integrate both so that students have a both and option, right? Otherwise, we are bifurcating students, maybe sort of inadvertently tracking them into either here's a program that will prepare you for immediate job entry, or here's a program that will let you earn college credit, but really with no career-connected learning at all. And this question is for sort of any and all of you who want to weigh in. Like, maybe you want to start.
I guess we're back to me. So I think one of the things we do well at our school, and we've tried to do this in partnership with industry, not independent of industry, and this is where the word bifurcation, I think, is important. There isn't a bifurcation, there's an integration. Our industry partners are driving our curricular decisions, and our curricular decisions are then having a very authentic impact on the learning experiences of students. And so students see the relevance and the authenticity in what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. I think the other part of it from a student standpoint, and this is something that I think is pretty important when we start thinking about sort of that traditional model of school where students go on this very linear path and they start in a certain grade and they progress through a certain number of courses and it culminates in like an AP experience and then off to college they go, is that we've been very circuitous in our discussions with kids in that sometimes things aren't as linear as they ought to be or as people think they ought to be, and that students do have rest stops along the way, and it's more of a road course than a track course, if you will, if to use an auto racing analogy. So I think that's something that has helped us avoid that bifurcation. And the other part of it, and I think we're seeing this, is the starting early piece, that students are having the same conversations around durable skills. I was looking at the statistics that Mr. Lambert shared, that Commissioner Martinez shared, and we're bucking those trends. Like our ninth grade passing rate in 2018 was 69%. And our ninth grade passing rate last year was 97%. Our chronic absentee rate, as everybody's was post-pandemic, was double digits, and last year it was single digits. So it is this idea of purpose with students, not purpose in spite of students, that really drives the avoidance of that bifurcation. And I think the piece that we've taken on this year that is, you mentioned challenges earlier, it's now getting the adults in the room to have that same conversation so that the English teacher, the civics teacher, and the engineering teacher are all having the same conversation around that durable skill, that collaboration is collaboration. Problem solving is problem solving. Leadership is leadership. Whether it's the student who is designing signs for a local church that's renovating its building, or they're talking about their civics project that's going to impact the community in some way, that those same skills get that same level of feedback from the same rubric driven by the same industry people. And I say people because what we've found with a high degree of consistency, and we see this when we get to our senior year and we do our internship boot camps, is that punctuality is punctuality. Whether you're working in an engineering shop or you're working at the hospital, punctuality is punctuality. So we want our kids to have these conversations and assess sort of the roadblocks on those. And I use punctuality because Mr. Moore out there was teaching punctuality last week, and getting to kids to understand that, yeah, there's a big Y going up in the middle of town. You have to plan for that. Like, these are the things that we are explicitly teaching students that they then have some connectedness to, and that avoids this so-called bifurcation that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the early start, I think, is really important. I think we think a lot about the fact that early college, that's not the end point, right? That is not the end goal. What we are preparing kids for in early college is happy, healthy lives, a productive career, and ultimately, getting them to a place of economic success. So, thinking about it, that it is one step in the process, which means early college has to be for a purpose, to an end goal. And giving young people an opportunity to think about who they are, what they want, and why they are signing up for certain early college classes that are aligned with long-term academic success and then career success is really vitally important to make sure that that bifurcation is not happening. But I think fundamentally one of the challenges we have in Massachusetts is we have set up two systems that kids have to sort of pick and choose. And so we need to think about the policy conditions that will help make that less of a choice that kids have to make.
I think we all agree about it's no longer optional to integrate those things, and I think we've all hit on like students have to choose. But some of Dr. Alvarez's work in Miami-Dade, where she had the opportunity to develop and expand those CTE choice programs of the blended industry certifications, paid internships, and dual opportunities, so that students could graduate with both college credits and career opportunities. But personally, I've experienced that as well. I think about schools where I spent years, particularly my high school that I went to in Memphis, Tennessee. You don't often hear great things, but my school was 95% of kids that looked like me, but I also had the option of Arabic, French, German, Spanish. I could list off etymology, mythology, and we also had an auto mechanic, an early childhood, cosmetology. I was having difficulty choosing between journalism and AP biology. And so I've never experienced anything different than having a variety of options. But what I do see sometimes in the siloing for our students is that the schools are focused on one specific path. Where if I think about my high school, there were multiple paths for students for education, whether you wanted to go into the sciences, the languages, auto mechanics, education. And so as we think about the design of our schools, not just the options at different schools, but the options within schools so that students have access in the communities where they live.
And I think that that's the opportunity, not just for Massachusetts, but when I take a critical lens to the let's call it the pathways field writ large, is I think it's at a huge inflection point. As a field, we've over-indexed on equity in access and not enough on equity in outcomes. I think we've over-indexed on, frankly, career, not enough on college. I think that the career pathways movement writ large has stalled in its conversation about pathways that lead, this was mentioned earlier, beyond something like the first credential or a certificate or an associate's degree. And unless we intentionally build systems that have pathways into the BA, whether directly or indirectly, we're failing a generation of students and we're at huge risk of creating a second-class system. And so when I say we, I'm including myself in that. Like, there's a field at risk here and there's a generation at risk here. And this, how do we not resort to a sense of zero-sum thinking that you should not be choosing when you are 14 or 15, quote unquote, what you want to do when you grow up, or even frankly, feel overly committed to what you're studying. You should be able to pursue that with curiosity and agency, but the system needs to wrap itself around you in a way that allows you to change your mind, which is a hallmark of adolescent development, which runs deep into our 20s, but our systems do not account for that. And so what's the opportunity in front of us is how do we design systems that are, bear with me, non-linear. I know we live through time linearly. I live in the real world with you here, but our systems do not really account for the fact that people need to and they do change their minds. We need to take an urban planning mindset as we think about the design of these systems, not a highway mindset, and include the factors that account for the richness of life that young people encounter in the full aspect of that, which includes a lot of things outside of school. And so how do we allow for those experiences to enrich the choices that they're making, honor them, and value them? And I think that this is where we are right now as a field, and Massachusetts and other states that are listening have an opportunity to be at the vanguard of that conversation and focus on outcomes, not outputs, to measure. If we really believe in belonging and value and connection, how do we measure that? And how do we hold ourselves accountable for saying something about young people achieving that place?
Well, to give an example, really building off of that, I mean, we had a student last year who started in 9th grade thinking he wanted to be in our engineering pathway. And about 2.5 years in, he realized he really liked the design side of it, but he didn't necessarily like the systems and the programming side of it. So what we ended up finding was that he really loved using certain kinds of technology. He really loved being in front of an audience. He loved the problem-solving, creative side of it. he didn't love always the engineering design process, the prototyping, the building something that was going to fall apart. Last week he contacted us, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm sure you saw something from him. He's at UConn now. We talk about digital credentials. He started with our Fusion and our engineering credentials. He turned that into some OSHA credentials. Then he got Adobe certified, and now he's an athletics communications specialist at the University of Connecticut 2 months into his freshman year. That's how it's supposed to work. And he started as an engineering pathway student. And we recognize at the end that, yes, he still did a capstone in his engineering program, because that's where that program took him. But he still also had the flexibility to explore graphic design. He still had the flexibility to take his AP statistics class. He still had the capability to take early college English. And none of that was mutually exclusive. And I think that's one of the terms that, Kyle really liked the term, that there's these off-ramps, and it's like urban planning, not a highway. Because if we put him on a highway, he'd be where a lot of our engineering students went. And that was perfect for them. He'd be at WPI or Wentworth, and he'd be very, very successful because he's a good student, but I don't know that he'd be happy. I don't know that he would have found what filled his cup necessarily, and he did. And I think there's a lot of stories like that you'll hear if you happen to be with us on the 28th or you want to talk afterwards. Shameless pitch.
So I can't let us move on from this question without shouting out EMK Academy as the school in Boston that's really working to do both for all of its students. So every student will be enrolled in a CTE pathway and have the opportunity now, thanks to the new early college designation with Bunker Hill Community College, to take college credit. And I know in the conversations before this panel, schedule was mentioned over and over again. And that is really the key to enabling EMK to build this out for both, is to plan such that students are sitting for credentials earlier in their high school career in order to create space to take those early college courses, later in their high school experience. And as the employer partner designing those work-based learning experiences, we're committed to working within that schedule as well, because we know that it's really important for students to have both opportunities.
Got it. Wonderful, thank you. Let me ask just one last question, because we're a little short on time, and then we'll turn to you in the audience, so make sure you have your questions ready. And my question is about the role of the state here. And I think the commissioner had to leave, but some of his team are still here.
Still here.
Oh, you're here, great. Perfect timing. How can state agencies further sort of guide, support, accelerate the work of schools and districts? What has the state done, for example, that you found helpful, and what else do you want policymakers to be thinking about?
From what I've
For
heard on the
anyone.
panel, it sounds like a lot of the work is grassroots from districts. And from Dr. Alvarez's perspective, she believes that the state plays a critical role in providing that vision and a coherent framework and a blueprint, particularly for those that have not done this work before. I think the panelist Kyle pointed out of how do we know who to invite into the room if you haven't done the work before? And so providing that blueprint, that coherent foundation for what this work should look like or what it might look like is for clear models and design principles for high quality pathways. And I'm not sure who said it, of not pulling people on board once the train is left off, but how do we make sure that they're at their train station when it starts in the design of the work? And so I think that Dr. Alvarez would agree that DESE has done great work in supporting us around our early college and innovation pathways. It's been incredibly helpful. It's really created an on-ramp for that collaboration to happen between K-12 and education and industry. But what I think is possibly overlooked is that need for that consistent technical assistance, planning tools, and funding frameworks that can help districts scale these models in an equitable way.
Can I build on that point as I think about Massachusetts, and again, any state, and I know states call them slightly different things, but I think this aspect of the resources, the braided funding strategies are critical to really scale this work. And I think trying to find ways to move beyond coordinated activity toward collaboration is punk these days, right? Collaboration is possibly the most radical thing we could do. And so often in the Pathways conversation, who's at the table? K-12, post-secondary, workforce. Who's not at the table? Transportation, energy, labor. Sometimes labor's at the table. Those agencies also have students, right? When I think about, so yes, the student voice and how do we activate the voice of students and community, but when we think about agencies that have dollars, and they have frameworks, they have ways of moving people from education into employment that are tested, that are tried, that are true, that are inclusive of apprenticeship, that are inclusive of bachelor to master's degree programs, but they're often not a part of the conversation around designing the systems that begin in K-12 and move through post-secondary. So how do you activate cross-agency collaboration so that there's a vision around what one system that is really accessible to young people? Like you talk to most young people, they have no idea that there's a State Department of Energy, let alone what they do, let alone that there are good jobs in energy in the public and private sector. So how do we coordinate across that thing and then all the way to the grassroots piece? I love that. Like making sure that the voices of people are a part of the conversation.
And another sort of people bet that I think we often miss, and I think Brian mentioned in his comments, is the important role of the school counselors. And career counseling in particular has to be much more much more robust focus than it currently is. You know, I think when we think about teacher pipelines, it's certainly critical to begin to train teachers really in their their education around what these pathways could look like. But there's also a critical component of how are we supporting career counselors in a really strong way, and we quite frankly just don't have enough of them to do all of the work that needs to be done to help guide young people to where they need to be.
Thank you. Well, I'll take the momentary silence as a sign that it's time for us to turn to our friends in the audience. We have time, I think, to take 2 or 3 questions. And as always, please make it brief and please make it a question. And please wait for the mic so that the people on the live stream can hear you. We have 100-something people online. So yours is the first hand that I saw, so let's go to you first. Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
So the question is, who is doing meaningful work, collaborating with community-based organizations? After School Alliance has amazing data. After school improves attendance, improves engagement and learning, et cetera, and I'll stop there.
Thank you.
I could speak to that because we have a number of partnerships with some community-based organizations. We have students that intern both within our school district. There was and that sounds like kind of a cop-out, but it's not. I mean, we have kids that are on future education pathway where they're working in our elementary and our middle schools. We also have a program that works in our community called Girls on the Run, which builds confidence in females. And we've actually had some males that have worked for Girls on the Run, doing some of their financial analytics and some of their marketing tools and some of their community outreach. We've also had some folks that have worked specifically right here in Boston. They come up to the State House and work doing some of the outreach work with our state reps and our state senator's office. And that's actually been particularly for those students has been a really powerful engagement. And then there are some other agencies within our, I don't know if that was like the music started. There's also a couple of other community agencies that we have in the Blackstone Valley. Either there's a community center in Whitensville. that we've had some students partner with as well. The challenge that we have, and you mentioned you're on the North Shore, is that when you get a little bit outside of 495 into what we out in 495, like where the dragons live, there are less social organizations and there's less infrastructure. So there is, when we have students that struggle with, like, we have English language learners, the resources are fewer and further between. So that is a challenge for us, that there aren't as many of the sort of governmental civic agencies that you find maybe in the more urban areas. I grew up in Malden. It was much easier to, I think, sometimes locate some of those like sort of intercultural sort of experiences for kids. That's a lot harder to find for students who are interested in. Just speaking as a school, from a school where everybody looks like me, we're 88 or 89% Caucasian. So that does, for students who are really aspiring to a program that maybe allows them into environments that are different than theirs, that is a significant challenge, and I appreciate you pointing it out.
Yes, I would like to build on that. I really appreciate, I don't remember your name, but thank you for calling out the importance of community-based organizations. As we think about community-based organizations are the place where our families and kids go when they don't feel comfortable coming to the schools where they may not have had a great experience, or the kids, to your point of the people in the school district don't necessarily look like them. And so as we think about the opportunities for our community-based partnerships and how we have to think about school district differently for K-12, is getting outside of our four walls and how are we leveraging the places where our students and families are comfortable to just even beyond the actual work itself, but the everyday work that we do. And if that's the most comfortable space, that community-based partnership, whether it's providing transportation, healthcare, of how are we being intentional in our partnership with them, but in this work around pathways, how do we leverage them for partnerships that, frankly, people like me that do work in Lynn, I'm not from Lynn, so I don't know the community like I do know Memphis, Tennessee, where I can tell you every nook and cranny of where to go. And so those community-based partnerships are really important as we think about expanding this work and how, as a district or even higher ed, we cannot carry all this work and do it well with the intention of serving all of our students well, particularly one of the partnerships with our multilingual learners, as you mentioned, we have the Cultivate Pathways, who do support that Pathways work that we don't necessarily have the staff to do. And so again, I do want to thank you for elevating that and providing the opportunity for us to be more intentional about how we leverage the community-based partnerships.
I think another important point though is this is a community effort, community-wide effort, and whether you have a local partnership or not, there are a lot of nonprofits that are also trying to move in the same direction. And so I think Mike has actually done a really good job in Uxbridge about bringing in partners that can fill gaps that they might not be able to fill themselves. So whether it's Big Picture Learning or the CAPS Network or the Work-Based Learning Alliance, he has really done a good job at braiding together resources from other nonprofits that might be able to lend support where the district doesn't have the capacity to provide the full service.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do one more quick question, maybe with one response over here.
Hi, I'll try to be quick. Lisa Craigot from the Hestia Fund. We've been investing in K through 12 for many years, and it's where we began today. A little sad with the MCAS results.
Yeah.
It was an understatement. And literacy. I just wanted to comment on Dr. Martinez's slide about Objective 2, learning experiences, and I'm a little concerned that we're not also pushing math for all. I think that it is not just a challenge of reading literacy, it's math literacy. And studies have shown if we advance math literacy, we also advance reading literacy. So I think we need to call that out, and whatever we're trying to do today, it affects CMK, it affects our wonderful achievements at Madison Park here in Boston. I think that's got to be right on the table and out there. And I'm interested in your comments about what you're seeing and doing, because it also affects workforce development with our teachers, because we have a deficit of strong math instruction.
Thank you.
So I could tell you that we've been sort of on this conversation around math specifically, and I could talk about the math curriculum sort of for a while. I think one of the biggest impediments we have is still this notion that if a student doesn't get to calculus, there's a problem. And I think that's been sort of one of those sort of elephants in the room, that every time we start talking about math instruction, it comes back to this concept of calculus. And not every student needs to take calculus. So what we've really started to drill into is the 9th and 10th grade sequence on algebra and geometry, involving a lot of like in-depth problem solving. I'll give you an example. I was in an 8th grade math class just a few days ago, and what the teacher was doing was he had put 4 problems on dilation on the board, and the students had to explain why each of the 4 was wrong, solve it correctly, and then explain what they did. And so there was this whole metacognitive piece around the problem solving that then the students then took a quiz. I asked the teacher, what was the results of the quiz? He goes, well, everybody got 100 on the quiz because they already knew what mistakes to look for. And that's what we're talking about with mastery. But for all of those students getting the same thing in grade 8, or getting a same foundation, I don't want to say the same thing, when they get to 10th and 11th grade, and this brings back Julie's point about counseling, some students, yes, it's important for them to then continue pre-calculus, calculus. They're going to go to a selective 4-year school where an AP math is going to matter. But then there are other students who are sitting in a calculus class, and their pathway is saying they're going to be in, I'll give you an example. We had a student a few years ago who was going to be in elementary education, and was going to go backwards when she got to college in the sequence, from AP Calculus as a senior to college algebra as a first year in college. So what can we do to continue the trajectory and give kids more of a purpose? And I think that's something where having higher ed at the table with us to say that not every first year college student is taking calc, not every first year college student needs to be taking advanced statistics, that there are a lot of different paths within math would help us in the grade 9-10 conversation, because our grade 10 scores, and at least in Uxbridge last year, were solid. But I think the reason they were solid is because we had spent more time on the literacy framework of math and not the numeracy framework of math. And I don't know if that makes sense to everybody in the room if you're not a math curriculum person, but that was really a drill down effort for us.
Thank you. Well, in the interest of time, we're going to have to put a pin in it, unfortunately, and Ed has permitted me to skip his closing remarks. Thank you. So I would like to take the opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to our star panelists and to the Commission. As well as to the commissioner and the superintendent. I can't see them, but I think this time he did leave. But the superintendent's still here. I know these conversations will continue, and I encourage you to stay behind if you are able to, because a lot of valuable connection happens after we close out. But for now, thank you all for coming. This is the end of our formal program, and to be continued. Thank you.